Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Woodstock, Georgia, it's time for Cherokee Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to another exciting and informative edition of Cherokee Business Radio. Stone Payton here with you this morning. And today's episode is brought to you in part by our community partner program, the Business RadioX Main Street Warriors, defending capitalism, promoting small business, and supporting our local community. For more information, go to mainstreetwarriors.org. And a special note of thanks to our title sponsor for the Cherokee chapter of Main Street Warriors, Diesel David Inc. Please go check them out at dieseldavid.com. You guys are in for a real treat this morning. We've got a studio full. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast, first up on today's episode, Director with Acti-kare Marietta, Cherokee, and North Fulton, Miss Myrna Cesar. How are you?
I am doing awesome. So glad to be here.
It's a delight to have you in studio. We're neighbors here at a co-working spot called the Innovation Spot.
Yes, we are.
We've had lots of conversations. This has been in the planning for some time. I got a ton of questions. I know we're not going to get to them all, but I think a great place to start might be if you could paint for me and our listeners a bit of a picture of mission, purpose, what you and your team are really out there trying to do for folks.
Well, Acti-kare of Marietta is basically our focus is to keep client as active as possible in their home. The age range varies depending on their needs. So our main focus is keeping a client at home, safe, and providing awesome service.
Well, it sounds like noble work and fun work if you can get it. What's the backstory? How did you find yourself doing this?
My aunt, who lives in Florida, we went to visit, my mom and I. So I have to say it was my mom who dragged me in this space.
Way to go, Mom.
I know. So, we went to visit her in Florida. She has, at the time, a slight case of Alzheimer's dementia. I didn't like the service that, the agency that was providing the service, the way they talked to her, the way they were engaging with her. So, I let them go, and then I stayed a couple of months. And at the time I was working in corporate. So I can pretty much work anywhere in the U.S. So I set space for about 3 months, and trying to, get engaged with her and see, the best service and agency that can provide care once we leave. So I had a slew of them that came through, and Acti-kare was one of them. So I like the way, they engaged us from start to finish, and how they incorporate her into the decision making, care plans and all of that. So, my mom was sitting next to me. She said, "Oh, she has a very French accent. Oh, you can do this. This is you." I said, "No, Mommy, I have a nice little cushy job in corporate America. I don't want to do this." She's like, "Oh, you can do this." So a few months went by, and she came back again. She's like, "Have you decided what to do? Because you want to leave corporate, because you want to do your own stuff?" I'm like, "Nah, I don't. I'm okay." So finally I did. And I did all my research, and so Acti-kare, it didn't break the bank. So I didn't have to sell my firstborn child to buy into a franchise. And I'm glad I did.
And you made the decision to join a formal franchise. Did you ever consider, hey, I'm going to do this, but I'm just going to be, Cesar Care?
No, because I didn't know the ins and out of the business, and I needed to be part of a family that's been around for a while, so I needed that structure and that knowledge before I could have, but it would have taken me a while to get, dirt under the fingernails type of, yeah. So, yeah.
Right. And I'm operating under the impression there's some brand equity, if that's the right phrase. There's some recognition. There's some procedures back into the house, all that stuff.
Exactly. They educate you to a point where it makes the process dealing with the red tapes, from, state to state way better. So now if I wanted to, consult with someone who wants to do it on their own, I can definitely help them because now I know all the nitty gritty of what to do, how to do it. Yeah.
So now that you've been at it a while, what's the most rewarding? What's the most fun about it for you?
For me, it's working with not just my team, but learning from the seniors and their life, understanding what makes them tick, and they're funny as heck. So to me, it's the relationship with a client and also their family, because we're not only providing care to them, but also making sure that their family feels comfortable and they know that, their loved one's safe. So, because one of the slogan of Acti-kare, when you can't be with your loved one, we can. And so we're kind of like an extension of their family.
Well, that's an excellent point. We're not there yet for me, but my parents, they now live 2 minutes away. They were down in Florida. I grew up in Pensacola, Florida, and they're not there yet. But when they are, I guess I'm going to be a client too, right? I'm the client too, not just mom and dad.
Exactly. So what we do and what I've been doing is really educating the public on if you have, aging parent, what to do, how to engage them, because we seem to think, a lot of people think, and even I'm definitely guilty of that now that my mom is older, now I'm taking, reign of this. Now she's my child that I'm taking care of and I can tell what to do. But no, they're not. They're grown adults. She raised me. So I have to follow a certain line that she needs help and I'm there to provide help, but she's also an independent person. So you have to respect those boundaries as children of an older parent.
So you talked about educating. How does the whole sales and marketing thing work for a business like yours? Is that a big part of the strategy? The way that you meet your market is by educating people, and maybe ideally early rather than late?
That's definitely one aspect. The other aspect is really, door to door, going down, meeting, going to senior facilities and talking, reaching out to them, providing free service. I do a lot of bingos at a lot of facilities. So I'm in the community and they see me as the brand of Acti-kare Marietta. So that's one aspect of it. Then I also have leads that we received.
Another benefit of being part of this formal franchise. Okay.
Exactly. So, and then we have, bootstrap marketing. I have, a couple of sales, ladies that goes out and sell our services, facilities, doctor's office. We have all our marketing material all over the place. Beside myself, doing the show and dance.
Well, no, it's a good lesson and a good conversation for budding entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs. I don't care how great the franchise is or how cool the idea is. You're not going to build it and they come. You got to have some kind of approach to go.
That's exactly what I tell people. Don't put in your head that I provide all these services and people will just going to be knocking at my door. That doesn't happen. You have to be out there promoting it and sometimes giving free services, going to expos, wherever a senior is, Myrna is there. with the banner of Acti-kare. This is who we are, what we do, and how we do it.
All right. So let's talk about who you are, where you are, how you do it, the work itself. And if you want, you can use me as a case study, although maybe I'm too early in but I would like to know, let's talk more about the work itself.
So normally, a client will, a son or daughter will call me and said, I have mom. She lives alone. We want to respect her space and provide service at home, which is awesome because that's where you want them to be.
Yeah.
Facilities, sometimes, family can help but put someone in a facility. But there are, one or two caregivers and they're taking care of 24 people. So that one-on-one, that connection is not there. The level of care is not there. So when someone calls me and said, okay, mom is 80 years old and, she has no major health concern. But we want to have someone that comes and provide companionship, that makes sure that she's eating the right food, making sure that she's dressed, she's showering. She can do all those things by herself. And sometimes she's afraid that, she may slip and fall in the shower.
Right.
So, I will go and I will do an assessment, to make sure that there's no rugs around that she can easily fall. There's some grab bars in the bathrooms. Things are easily accessible to her in the kitchen. So I will look at all of that and
see, that never even was on my radar. None of what you just said was on my radar.
I know.
I mean, the idea of a companion and someone there, yes, but not I need to check their house for rugs when I go later today.
Well, we have a checklist that I can share with you.
See there?
So there's a checklist that I go through the house and I make sure that things are okay.
Yeah.
So once that happens, then I kind of get a feel for how many days of the week that you want this. We don't impose, that you have to have 40 hours. You have to have someone here because they may not need someone 24 hours a day. They just need someone 3 hours a week, 2 or 3 times a week. So we'll go and we'll kind of fine tune that. And then talk to mom. My engagement is really to a mom or a dad. Just to get into their head, if they're okay with this. Now I've talked to son. Now I'm talking to, are you okay with this? What are some of your concerns? Because sometimes I'm like, I don't need anybody. And then now my job is to really say, okay, we're not going to intrude. We're just here for some help. We'll help you. If you need help with the laundry, we'll do that for you. If you need a good cooked meal instead of going to Wendy's, we'll do that. A little vacuuming here. It's like, oh yeah. And usually I put it in such a way that this is really to help your daughter because your daughter is at work in the office. So she doesn't have to worry that you go and slip and fall. She doesn't have to worry that you're not eating the right stuff. But it clicks for them automatically.
What a great way to frame it.
Yeah.
Because that would be meaningful that would be far more meaningful to my parents that it's helping me. Yeah, I love it.
Yes. So kind of take that burden off of you. And then so once that happens and like, oh yeah, we're going to do it. They make the decision. Yeah, we want you. Let's do it. Before they sign any agreement. So I go back to my office, call the nurse and have the nurse do an assessment. That is a requirement by the state of Georgia. That if you are licensed by the state of Georgia, you are required to do a nurse supposed to come and do an assessment. So we scheduled the nurse to do the assessment. They signed the agreement. The agreement is this, list out all the, 3 days a week, the time. We're going to be here from 10 to 12, and we're going to provide X services. And then you sign. Now you can try us out for whenever you decide to say, you know what, mom is okay. we don't need the services anymore. So you're not locked into a 2-year contract. It's as needed basis. So once that happens, and then I also try to connect the personality of the client with the caregiver.
Oh, I bet that chemistry would be important.
Exactly.
Dan's over here nodding his head, and we're going to visit with Dan in a little bit, but he's living through very much a lot of what you're describing.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
But because even for Dan, because he's providing care for your mom, right? Mm-hmm. So even respite care, we do provide that service to home caregivers. Mm-hmm. So they can go to their doctor's appointment or do the kind of thing, or go have lunch with a friend. So we also, that's all under that umbrella.
And all of this, I'm under the impression that we may start with program A and it's outlined like this, but as we get further and further in, we can dial it in and fine tune it, right? The needs evolve, or we're a lot smarter a month or two in about what we really need and want.
Exactly. Exactly. And at time it sometimes it just grew from 3 days to 5-7 days, depending on the level of care that the client needs.
And this didn't have anything at all to do with your corporate job?
No, no. I have to say, my mom reminded me the other day. She's like, well, when you were in high school, you work in a nursing home. I was like, oh yeah, your major was a pre-med major. I'm like, oh yeah. It's like, your degree is in clinical psych. You work with autistic kids and And now that you have forgotten, that's what she reminded me. So you have forgotten the gifts that was planted in your heart. I'm like, okay, I'm done.
I feel like you've described a lot of the elements and I'm connecting the dots, but in short form, how would you articulate the difference in Acti-kare and what you guys do and the way you approach it versus maybe the rest of what we might find in the general market?
I think the way we approach dealing with our care partners, that's what we call them, our care partners, is that that one-on-one is always there. They have my number at any time. They can call me. Not a whole lot of agency. You can call the owner.
Yeah, I bet.
You can call me. The type of care plan that we create for our client, they are part of not just the client but also the family. When we create the care plan, we incorporate them into that, so they know exactly when a caregiver walk into their home what they're supposed to do. In addition, we leave a communication log in every home. That communication log has my direct number. It has our liability insurance. So you'll know that if something happens to a caregiver in your home, you're not going to be burdened with the costs of healthcare. Yes. So we incorporate all of that in that communication log. So if I'm a daughter and I live in Texas, which I do have clients and we're taking care of their family, they live in Texas. If they walk in 2 weeks from now, they can tell exactly what happened,
nice,
what mom ate, when we do laundry for her, when we took her to appointments, doctor's appointment, all of that in that communication log. And it goes back. So that's a requirement of mine. So I know as a daughter who has an aging parent that's what I would like to have, to see when I walk in. I want to see, okay, mom did this, she did that. Oh, she ate this morning. Oh, okay. Okay, we did this exercise. So we incorporate all of that in that communication log.
All right, I'm going to switch gears on you for a moment before we wrap your segment. I don't know when you'd find the time, because it sounds to me like you got a lot going on. But passions, pursuits, interests, hobbies outside the scope of your work, anything you have a tendency to. My listeners know I like to hunt, fish, and travel.
Okay.
But is there something like that you nerd out about?
I am, I come from a technical world, and
Yeah.
I'm still in there, and I'm a creative person. So, last year I created this magazine called Senior Chronicle, which we'll talk about. It was a way for me to highlight all these, aging seniors that has so much to offer, and they're just sitting at home, looking at the shiny object we call television.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I wanted to put them up front in terms of who they are, as fabulous as they are, on a magazine cover, so they can have something to talk about. So, so that is the creative piece of me. In terms of what I do on a daily basis, I'm a big, hot yoga fan. I also play pickleball.
We were chatting about that before we came on air, where the whole studio, everybody but Stone plays pickleball. I'm going to have to look into this.
Yes. So, there's a wonderful indoor pickleball place, in Roswell that I go to. Some friends of mine. So yeah. So I'm learning pickleball. It's awesome.
All right. Let's leave our listeners with a couple of actionable tips. Maybe they're in my situation where it's early, but the parents are getting a little bit older and they need a little help. I thought just like what you mentioned earlier about just around the home. Well, a couple of tips so that we could practical, actionable tips to help them just be better at communicating with and working with, aging family members.
Yeah. One tip I would like to leave, and I think I alluded to that earlier, that your parents are your parents. And rather than coming and take over, they need more guidance than for you to take over their lives. You will get a lot of pushback. So I would suggest not to do that. I created actually a presentation on how to talk, to, an aging parent on, receiving services from agencies. It's, and I usually send that out, to potential leads or people that have called me. I send that out, in addition to how to select the best care agency that fits for your family. There are certain things there are certain questions you need to ask because they're coming into your space. They're coming into your parents' space. You need to know, the questions to ask, like, what kind of, training does your caregivers have? How do you, make sure that the caregiver is who they say they are? I know Acti-kare, although we run them through the database in the state of Georgia, but I do a statewide check because you can be beautiful in Georgia and not so beautiful in North Carolina. Yeah. Yeah. So you have to know, and I know for some, it's new territory and they get really, trying to figure it out. Call Acti-kare. We'll help you figure that out.
I love it. And when you come back, and you are coming back, we're going to dive in more on this magazine. I could see like a periodic installment, almost like an audio column of what's going on with, is it Senior Chronicle?
Senior Chronicle, yes.
All right. So we're going to have you back and we're going to dive into that. But for now, let's make sure that our listeners know how they can tap into your work, where they can get their hands on some of this educational material, have a more substantive conversation with you or somebody on your team, whether it's a website, whatever coordinates make sense.
The number is 678-559-5887. You can send me an email. It's mcesar@actikare.com. Acti-kare, care with a K, not a C. Or you can go to our website, www.actikare.com/Marietta.
What a pleasure to have you in studio and visiting with us.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you sharing your insight, your perspective, and I'm quite sincere. We're going to have you back in here, and we'll explore that later. We're neighbors anyway, so we'll grab some coffee and talk it through. How about hanging out with us while we visit with our other guests?
I would love to, because you have some really cool people here.
I do. All right. Next up on Cherokee Business Radio this morning, please join me in welcoming to the show with Chase King Art, the man himself, Mr. Chase King. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Hey, did you learn anything in that last segment?
I did. You offer some personalized care for seniors, and that's a great thing.
Thank you.
Yep. We've got an aging population, and they need it.
Some of the folks in this room are a little longer in the tooth than Chase, but
let's not get too personal.
Tell us about Chase King Art, man.
Well, it started when I was about 15 years old. I had a great art teacher in high school. He took me under his wing. And at the time I needed a little bit of guidance. I had just lost my mother to cancer, to a brain tumor. It was kind of it happened pretty fast. About, I guess, 6-8 months. It just kind of swept over and took over. But it was a kind of a traumatic event, but I had my grandparents with me, and they raised me, and they took me under and helped me out, but I needed a little bit of guidance. And at the time I was skateboarding, and I loved skateboarding. I had some good friends all the way up through high school, but I needed something to do, and painting became that. And it was a good outlet for me to express my emotions and angst at the time and just kind of figure out life. And from there, it hasn't stopped.
So have you landed on a niche, a style, a type of painting, a medium? I don't even know the right questions you ask. I'm just asking questions.
That's
like,
okay.
Like, do you paint oils or watercolor? Yeah.
I do just about all of that. My primary medium would be oil painting, but I do work in a lot of graphite, watercolors, pastels. I like to draw a lot, so I just kind of bring that into the fold as I do my drawing. And then the oil painting is like the pinnacle of my ideas. Whenever I get to a point where I'm going to do something major, I'll do it in oil. And
you're painting people, landscapes, hot
about
rod cars,
yeah, just
pretty
about
horses.
All that. I'm an observer, and my life, I just like to watch things and look and see, and I'll just pull from just about any resource that I can if it's interesting enough to me. Or if it's not interesting and I want to figure out a little bit more about it, I'll paint it and see what I can
make
do.
it interesting.
Yeah, right. So just about anything, but I have a very expressionistic style, and I use a lot of color, and I take a lot of liberties with form. So it may not look like as realistic as it could, but it's identifiable, and it gets your attention.
Now, you do something that seems very unique to me. At least I haven't come across it, where you'll paint. Is it live painting? You paint like at events,
yeah,
and you capture what's going on at the event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll either be on the fringes of the audience, or I'll be slap dab in the middle. It just depends on all events are so different. I just have to coordinate with who's organizing the event. But yeah, I take in the entire audience, everything that's going on, and I'm either working from my sketchbook or I'm working from scene, and I'm just painting, and people love watching stuff evolve in front of them. It's like you could watch a tree grow, but it's a painting instead. It's just super fast. And some events can be an hour, 2 hours or less. So it happens fast. And I've been doing this for about half my life. So I've been able to develop speed, and it was kind of a natural way for me to showcase what I do to the public.
Well, I'm so enamored with the idea. I mean, even in my world where we in studio like this, or like Thursday, we're going on site to do what we call a remote broadcast.
Yeah.
We'd be broadcasting live. It's a big technology summit kind of thing. How cool would it be if you were kind of off to the side painting the action, maybe at the whole event, but even just the Business RadioX action. Mm-hmm. I'm intrigued with this.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for me to meet people. It's also a great opportunity for other people to be around creativity in a way that you wouldn't expect. It's kind of surprising. Right. And I like that about it, and I think other people do too. And I'm just trying to grow a business model around that. And it's been exciting. been really fun, and it makes me tick. It really does.
So that's the other side of all this. You're an artist, marvelous. I'm sure you'll continue to get better and better and enjoy all that. But oh, by the way, you got to run a business.
Yeah.
What are you learning about the business of being an artist?
Yeah, I've spent, again, half my life just developing my craft. I've sold paintings here and there, not consistently, but I've taken a leap as of 2 or 3 months ago now to do this full time. So I'm in the midst of it. I'm learning things as I'm going. Running a business is not, it's not anything to take lightly, especially if you've got people who are depending on you to provide. So there's aspects involved that I have to learn and figure out. So I've been able to do, I have a business. My wife is a business owner. Madeline was on here a few weeks ago.
Oh, she did a marvelous job. So you got to have a high bar to clear here, Chase.
She's a really great, she's so inspirational. So I have her in my corner to help me with figuring things out as the business goes on. But yeah, there's lots to learn, but I'm getting it.
All right. So as a potential customer, I could come to you and say, hey, we're doing this remote broadcast. I'd love to have you come in the studio. We're throwing a block party. So this live painting thing, what a great accent to a party, huh, Dan? Right?
Yeah. Very cool.
I think one of my questions for you is when you do this type of event, the energy must be like blinding because you're absorbing it as you're doing it. So that must be really hyped.
Yeah, no, it is. And there's a lot of nerves involved, but as I get started, it's just those kind of simmer down and I get to get focused. And also I get healthy distractions from the audience members and they get to talk and it just kind of takes my mind off of the nerves a little bit too. It's just a really cool immersive experience for everybody.
I gotta agree, man. I don't think I'll throw another party without maybe reaching out to Chase.
I did an event at Dare Park, around Christmas time. They had Santa Claus there, and they set me right up next to the fireplace where the kids were lining up, and I just was painting the Christmas tree in front of me. It was a big grand Christmas tree they had decorated, and I just was painting that as the kids were lining up, and I would let them paint on it, and I would just kind of work it in a little bit so didn't turn into a mess. Not all of them. I mean, it was an experiment to say the least. We just made it something and it was pretty cool. Awesome. And then we raffled it off. So there's just so many different possibilities to get involved, get the community involved with painting too. So that was kind of the first event that made me realize like, this is something I really need to be doing.
Very cool. So how are you finding the Cherokee area business climate? Do you find that other business owners are trying to find ways to help or ways to get you incorporated into things, or if you need an accountant or a lawyer, are you finding them in the community embracing you on this?
They're there for a lot of they're there for support, friendship, and I've been able to do business with quite a few of them, especially the Woodstock Arts Organization.
Oh yeah,
they were the ones who pretty much kickstarted my live painting idea because they asked me to do it during 2020, right before everything shut down. February. Just got back from Mardi Gras. I was riding high. You know, I saw a lot of theatrics out there. It was cool. So I got up on stage and it was 400 people behind me. So
wow,
I was like, that was nerve wracking. That was the first time I'd ever done that, and that was crazy. But the nerves went away after I just got locked in.
Awesome.
But yeah, Woodstock Arts has been a great supporter of mine as far as getting my career going. Honestly, I've taught there to painting live for their galas. It's been good. And then I mean, there's a number of other ones I'm trying to think. Capital Mortgage Solutions helped me out with that Adair Park event, and then collaborative co-working space at Adair Park. They had hosted an event 2 weeks ago, I believe. So yeah, it's all coming. They're all coming together and seeing what's going on, and any way that they can help, they do. And I try to do the same.
And then what I'm viewing as the more traditional artist work, like can someone come to you and commission? Is that the right word? Like hire you to paint a specific thing?
Mm-hmm. The more traditional route of my business is commissions or custom art, and I sell my original work too. And I do a lot of that, and I have a lot of that.
So you give yourself plenty of latitude to sit down and do what Chase wants to do, and then take that to market. But then you've got these other avenues.
Yep. That's the idea. I want to be able to hopefully just sell my artwork and do commissions and live paint. That's the
love
idea.
it. Yeah.
Awesome.
So how about you outside of painting? You enjoy other stuff, or that really is your thing?
That's my thing, but I love, I have a growing family. We have, like I mentioned, my wife, and we have two little girls, 2.5 and 1.
Oh my! Oh, you can't have a hobby for 15 years.
There's a little bit of
right, Dan.
And then it's all about keeping the girls at home.
Huh?
I say, and then the hobby is all about keeping the girls intact after 14 or 15 years.
They keep us busy. They're so much fun, though. I mean, it's so up and down and chaotic, though. You just can't predict any kind of behaviors. It's just whatever you get. So we can be feeding them dinner one night and they love it. And the next night they hate it. It's the same food. It just drives us up the walls. But then we have moments where it's just watching them play together and they're so sweet.
So I do know your wife, and I think the world of her, Madeline. It's a 2-entrepreneur family. Have you come across, begun to build some, I don't know what you call it, disciplines, or like, here's how we're going to conduct our lives? Because have you? Is it too early, or have you you're figuring your way on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting some things in order. We started doing that a little while ago. We got life insurance policies and stuff that we've been investing in, and just like trying to keep our house somewhat ordered as far as like getting necessary things we need, like food and paying our bills and our mortgage and all that, just making sure that all that's taken care of. As far as like the growing business, it's a crapshoot sometimes. It's just whatever works. We try to capitalize on what doesn't or what works, and then kind of put things to the side that don't work and try to refine things. So it is a learning curve for both of us. Two entrepreneurial spirits in the house. One's pretty fresh off the block too. So
right.
Madeline's got an upper hand, I think, and I'm learning a lot from her.
I'll bet you are. So, like Myrna, are you out there shaking the trees and networking and talking to people? And that, I mean, you got to do that, right? Mm-hmm. In addition to all the art. Yeah.
I learned that you have to do that, and there's so many ways to do that. But I'm a pretty reserved, shy person naturally. But I've been able to go to some networking events and just listen to people and talk with people and tell them what I do. It's got me out of my shell a little bit.
Good.
And doing this is a pretty big deal for me too, because I don't know. But doing the live painting thing, that was like, I didn't think I would be able to do that. But then again, I'm a pretty shy person.
But
I try to get it out though.
But you mentioned listening. And I think all of us who have been at it a while as entrepreneurs have learned that while being able to articulate ideas and frame up that and all that, that's certainly helpful. But I think the most powerful tool you can utilize in a sales and marketing capacity, and I think I see the other two nodding their head, is just being good at listening. Yeah. So
that's good to hear. That's reaffirming. Yeah.
And you'll profit from the law of contrast, because not every a lot of folks who may think they're listening are actually waiting. they're just waiting till you're done talking. Then they want to tell you they're not actually listening.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think for me as a business owner in this space, and I don't know if you come across this, because I want to help so much, and sometimes I'm like, okay, I'll do it for free. Do you find that? And then I have my staff will stop me and said, well, no, we'll do it for free today. And then because I have this yearning to help, I want to save everybody. Do you find that? And so it's the humanness of it. And then, but you have to balance the business side of it. And that's what I'm learning now, that I have to do the balancing act.
It's pretty typical of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They don't know how to price themselves, and they want to give it away.
It's a dark game.
It is.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because they do want to service people. That's why they do what they do.
Yeah. And it's not even the pricing. It's just, I feel so bad.
Right.
Yeah, we'll do it. for free. And
I just try to take what I do and educate people on the value of it. I'm not trying to boast or anything, but what people do for their livelihood is important, and you got to try to exercise that and display that to people and present it in a way that they're going to understand how valuable it is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to want a deal.
Yeah.
And if you keep giving them deals, they're going to keep expecting that, and that word spreads.
Well, and also you have to explain how valuable it is to them, because it's WIIFM. What's in it for me is so often the case. Yeah. And you're selling the value, not anything else.
Yeah. And sometimes you're even selling yourself, right?
Yes.
That's usually what you're selling in the value. But people sometimes ask me, why am I different? It's because I'm me and nobody else is. And that's one of the things I offer. It's not the key thing necessarily, but if somebody doesn't buy into me, they don't buy into what I do.
Sure.
Oh, I like that.
Sounds to me like...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it sounds to me like Chase has accumulated or already came to the table with a great deal more wisdom than I would have thought for someone who is very early in their entrepreneurial journey. I think he's got a good handle on it.
Yes.
And you had a phrase that I really liked when you said, and I've forgotten the first word, which was the crucial word, but you were talking about distractions. And
healthy distractions.
Distractions. That is such a great term because it's
get in our head a lot, and you just have to let things come to you, and
as opposed to trying to fight them off, which doesn't work very well, or get away from them, and it also doesn't work very well when you're doing things in the public eye.
Yeah, I'm a pretty firm believer of the law of attraction. I think if you can believe something and think something, you're going to keep attracting that to you, whether good or bad. So if someone comes up to you and is interested in what you're doing, it's because you're thinking about something that you're doing that's interesting. And the people want to know, so embrace it, right?
Right.
Or if you're doing something wrong, you're going to get something to come at you that's going to teach you a lesson. So accept it. Right.
Well, I can tell you, I turned 60 in August, and I do have a lot of anecdotal evidence that there is something to this law of attraction, or whatever you call it.
God or what? Something's in the works that is facilitating all this.
Well, I think the universe is conspiring to help you, and I think the universe should conspire to help you, Chase. I was inspired on this pricing and doing work for money and not getting caught in the free trap by something that happened last night. My wife, Holly, we're always looking for a new series to binge. And so we binge watched a series called Tracker. And this guy, and it's a network show, but we can watch it on Paramount Plus without the commercials. And he calls himself a rewardist. But, like if your kid goes missing or whatever and you offer a $20,000 reward, he goes and finds them, or somebody stole your, 1967 Mustang. Yeah. He goes and finds it. And every episode I thought to myself, okay, on this one, he's not going to charge him. He's going to say, here, you keep this and get your life back or whatever. But on every one of them, I had like that draw to not charge them and on every one of them, buddy, he took the check. He put it in his back pocket. I was so inspired by that. So, but it's hard to help people if you don't make money.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to be less personal about it and just sort of, but you're in the business of being personal, right?
Exactly.
So am I.
Exactly.
So are you, I'm sure.
Exactly.
So there's a balance, like you mentioned, and that is so crucial. I'm learning that too as I go.
Sounds to me like you're off to a marvelous start. All right. Thank you. What's the best way for folks to connect with you?
You can find me at chasekingart.com. And from there, you can find my Instagram is linked to my website. You can also find me on Facebook at Chase King Art.
Can we see your art in those places?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
If you want to see more of my process, you can see everything on my website because my Instagram is linked. But if you want to see my process in greater detail, follow me on Instagram because I'm sharing my process and how I'm creating. It's not just finished products. The Instagram, it's kind of like behind the scenes and what I'm doing, and that can be interesting for some folks.
I like Chase.
I do too, and I like what he's doing, and he's got plenty of ideas for you Or if you come to him with a general idea, he can probably help you make it a reality. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
All right. One more time, those coordinates.
JaceKingArt.com.
Fantastic. Going to hang out with us while we visit for the next. Well, thank you, man. This has been fun. All right, y'all ready for the headliner?
Well, I was going to clap for Chase.
All right, we can do that. I think we clap for Chase. There we go.
I'm all for it.
And people can't see him. He's cute.
Yeah, they can.
That might be a first. Clap for Chase. That could be a whole movement. Clap for Chase. That's a new meme. It's clap for Chase.
Clap for Chase.
No, our headliner, he's been very patient. He's been nodding his head. He's been very supportive. Please join me in welcoming to the show innovative coach with Strategy Sticks LLC, Mr. Dan Adkins. How are you, man?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. I didn't know what to expect. I'm here with two wonderful people and yourself, which makes three. And I just feel blessed to be here, particularly at this hour of the day. I had to get up a little earlier than my normal waking hour, but I was happy to do it. And it's like discovering a new world. So,
well, I've been doing this for right at 20 years, Dan, and I didn't know what to expect this morning either. So if that brings you any comfort.
And that's what I think is great about it. Excuse me. It must be morning. Yeah, when I was working in the film business, and I would have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to be on set by 6. And I would think, what was I thinking? I mean, that's just not my hour of the day. And yet getting up was terrible, but I loved being up once I was there. It just took a while for me to appreciate that. So, anyway.
So tell us about Strategy Sticks. What you out there doing, man?
Well, it's pronounced strategistics, but everybody seems to want to pronounce it strategy stick.
Okay.
So one day I'm going to go out and buy about 6,000 drumsticks and put little print strategies on them and hand them out. But Strategistics is we're kind of a strange company in that we focus on strategies, but on a lot of different things. For the most part, I'm focusing on nonprofits right now, helping them with leadership, helping them with fundraising, which actually overlap. If you have good leadership, you'll have successful fundraising. If your leaders are not quite where they need to be, or you're not developing leaders, your fundraising will suffer. So, as you were saying, people hire you because a lot of it is about you. That's the same thing with people giving money to nonprofits. They give money to people, not necessarily to causes, sometimes to causes, but a lot of times it's to people. If they don't trust the people, that cause goes down the tubes. So, I work with them on that. I work with them on developing plans, strategic plans, and on key investors or potential investors into their organization, people who will lead the parade both with their leadership and also with their pocketbook, because they can't survive without having people contribute. But there's a tiring effort for many executive directors because they are constantly asking for money. And they're going back to the same people over and over and over and over again. And it is almost a daily or weekly challenge for them because they've got to find money for this, that, or the other. So what I try to do is I have a system that will lead them toward a 5-year capital campaign, or a capital campaign that will fund them for 5 years for their programs. A lot of nonprofits don't realize that they can do that. They think that a capital campaign means I need to build a building, or I have to buy some extension on this building. It doesn't. It means that you have a secure 5-year budget and you can apply that to your programs if that's what you've told the people who are investing in it. And I believe it's not donors that you want investors. They want to invest their money. You want them to invest their energy, their time, their brain power, their contacts, and all of those things. And so that's what I go through. It's not magic. I was a professional fundraiser for a number of years and, fortunately had some successes. I also unfortunately had some failures, but the failures taught me how the successes worked and why the failures did not. And it usually stems from leadership and from an understanding of how to conduct a proper campaign or even proper asks. So that's what I focus on. And I have a new course that I've just developed to help nonprofits and to help executive directors who might want to enhance their leadership, want to enhance their teamwork effort, want to grow leaders within their organization and extend their financial situation by focusing on key potential investors and not just random investors or donors, depending on how you word it.
So when you approach this 5-year frame initially, do you often get some pushback, or are people like, hey, that's novel, that makes a lot of sense, let's dive in? Or
Well, it's a combination because there are people who understand a capital campaign and they just don't necessarily understand that it would apply to their budget for 5 years. It would. So it's not so much pushback as it is they're reticent about a campaign because they don't really know how to conduct it or how it works necessarily. And if that's what they're striving for, a lot of times they're not in a position to do it. And you have to kind of prepare your way, which is not an overnight preparation. You have to get the right people involved. You have to get the right people that are supporting your organization from a non-financial standpoint as well as a financial standpoint. And very difficult to just walk in and go, okay, I'm going to do a 5-year campaign and I want to raise all this money. Well, that's great, but you also have to do a feasibility study to see how much money is reasonable to actually raise. And by that, you go to your community and ask them. And so you go through that. Then you have to actually ask them to contribute. But it's not something you just, grab a figure out of the air. Some do. And they say, well, we want to raise $5 million. And it's like, well, good luck with that because your community says you're going to max out at $1 million or a little, maybe a little more than that. And there's just no way on the planet that you're going to reach that dollar figure in a campaign. But you have to even prepare that. I mean, that has to be, and a lot of nonprofits don't do that. And it's painful. It's painful to do a campaign. It's all hands on deck. Everybody's involved, and it usually takes 8 months to a year. So it's not something that a lot of people want to do, and particularly when you have a board that is predominantly business people, and they've got their own lives, they've got their own businesses, and suddenly you're going, well, I want you to put a lot of time in this, and also you're asking them to call perhaps their friends to be as generous as they should be in terms of the campaign. And a lot of boards think that, you hire a professional fundraiser and go raise money. In the case that I found myself in, I was going to cities that I'd never been to, smaller towns and smaller cities in the Southeast where I'd never been. And people would say, okay, go raise money. Most did not because they understood it by that point. But if they do that, nobody in that town knows me. There's no reason for them to give me a penny.
Right.
But if their best friend walks in and says, I'm on the board of this organization, I'm thinking I'm going to contribute. Maybe they'll say a dollar figure, maybe not, but I'm going to contribute to this effort. And I'd like you to listen to Dan so that he can tell you what it's all about. I'll carry it from there. So I'll tell them what the story is. I'll tell them what the strategies are. I'll tell them what the idea is behind it, why it's important to them, why it's important to their community. And then I'll shut up and
how's that for a pro tip on selling?
I'll ask
Say
them,
it, shut up.
I'll ask them for a dollar figure, but then I'm quiet and just sit and wait and listen. He who talks first loses the argument. So someone will then respond. Often, I have to check with my board. I have to check with my wife. I have to check with, my dog, whatever. And then sometimes they'll respond and say, yeah, I'm in. But a lot of times, they'll have to check with somebody. I'll do all the follow up. The person who introduced me is now pretty much out of it unless I'm just getting nothing from that person. And I may call them and say, hey, can you just give them a little prompt to make a decision? It can be yes, no, whatever the decision is, but could you prompt them so that if they're not going to participate, I don't have to keep bothering them. And if they're going to participate, let's get it rolling.
So I have a tendency to see a lot of things through a sales lens. I came from the training consulting world, but I kind of gravitated to the sales side of that world. And it occurs to me that you are constantly selling. You got to sell the work to get the gig. Then you got to sell them on doing it this way. And then you're going to go out there and help them sell. You do a lot of selling, don't you?
Well, actually, it's not that much because they understand if they decide, well, if I'm going to do a capital campaign, which frankly, I'm not interested in doing, I'm interested in doing the prep.
Okay.
But if I'm going to do a capital campaign, they understand the need. They're happy to have me there to do it. So I don't have to sell them on that. The main thing I have to sell them on is participating at a fairly high level.
You got to get me to reach out to Chase and say, hey, Chase,
that's right.
And I'd like you to listen to Dan for why. I think you ought to get involved with
let's get together for 30 minutes and give him a shot. That's it. And a lot of people are reticent to do that to their friends. And they're also reticent to do it to people who aren't their friends because they know it's money and they really don't want to get into that. I don't mind asking for money. I'll ask anybody for money and I'll ask them for a lot. So if it's determined that's what we do, but there are strategies for different people because those people who know them may say, well, they've had a rough year this year and we really, I think what we're asking is too high, or they're making money hand over fist. They can afford to jump in on this. And I know that they have an affinity for this organization. So you have to figure out how to approach them in the best way. And that's why you have a friend help you.
Right. Right.
They just point me in the right direction. Then I can be the dog after meat.
So this is fascinating.
It is, isn't it? How do you get the business in the first place? Have you just been at it long enough that you've helped one organization and they're also on the board of another one and they go, oh, we ought to talk to Dan kind of thing?
No. There is some of that, but it's very limited in my case. But I do a thing that I call chatterboxing, and that's I call people cold and just say, hey, I have some questions for you. I'm doing this, this, and this, and I'm wondering if I'm headed in the right direction, if your organization would think this was a good idea. And I have 6 or 8 questions. I never make it past the third question because people say, well, what are you doing exactly? I'll say, well, I just developed a course mainly for executive directors to understand better leadership and how that influences their fundraising. And I'm going to start the course at a certain time. And I'm just trying to make sure that I'm focused properly on the right things. And is that something you'd have any interest in? And, people tell me yes, no, or indifferent. I had one fellow say, no, I don't want to take your course, but I want you to coach me. And I'm like, okay, that'd be fine. I'm happy to do that. And others have said, yeah, that sounds like something we need. So that's how I developed that. And the same with my coaching. I just talk to people, and I'll talk to, the guy in the grocery store. I'll talk to a tree, so, It's mainly that. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Is there the company, does it have to be worth a certain amount of money for you to work with? Let's say I don't work with a company that's less than.
I would never negate any organization.
Oh, awesome.
However, the key with nonprofit is they do have to have the money to pay me. If they don't have the money to pay me, then obviously that's not going to work out very well, because I am not one who I give some services away, but it's limited, and because this is my income. And so, and the course in terms of this type of offer and coaching, I'm in the inexpensive level of that. However, that's not necessarily inexpensive for nonprofits, depending on their budget. And they don't often budget for things of this nature. So I have to get them to either refunnel some of their budgeting or find the money. Some of them, there are a number of nonprofits, and it's fairly significant, that do have money like that, but there are a lot who don't. So that's the only qualification, is they have to pay me. I'm happy to have them aboard.
Awesome.
In fact, I'd like to work with a lot of beginning nonprofits because I think I could help them a great deal.
So the focus is mostly with nonprofits, not necessarily,
small
for
businesses.
business.
Yeah, I do small businesses as well.
Okay.
I've just been focusing on nonprofits because I developed this course. My plan is to develop a course for small businesses as well, particularly startups, but even beyond startups.
Well, let us know.
Okay, have no fear.
Okay.
And of course, the other thing is my book that I recently launched, and I want to say that Acti-kare sounds like a fabulous service. My book is called Gifts from My Father. It's about my dad's journey in dementia and the things that we had to accommodate, but it's also walking away from it with positive things. And I applied some of those to business and some of those to life. I have 10 business gifts and 11 life gifts. I'm sorry. And, listening to you describe your services is fantastic. I have a bonus within the book. You can also get it outside of the book, but it's called 39 Questions to Ask when you are looking to put a loved one in a facility. And it's questions for the person or the family to answer. And then there are also the majority of questions are about the facility. And you brought some up about, do you have trained personnel? Are they nurses? Do you have a nurse on staff? Am I able to call people at all hours? What happens and all of those things?
And how are you communicating to the family?
Yes.
To make sure that they know mom or dad, they've been taken care of. Facilities, I try to, as I do consult, because I do consultant work with children. So when they ask me my opinion, my preference is to keep a loved one at home. It's a familiar place. They're more comfortable and they're able to live longer. When they stay within the confine of their home, and they can still provide, you can still provide in the exercise, the, outings and all of that.
Sure.
But they're at home and they feel more comfortable there. So yeah, facilities for me are just kind of,
well, I think you certainly have to make sure that you have a facility that is structured in the way that you were talking about your company being structured. And there are good ones and there are some that are not as wonderful, but, it's so important. And I believe that they should stay at home as long as possible. In our case, my mother was my dad's caregiver. Well, my mother was no young spring chicken, and he was wearing her out. She just couldn't do that. And so we eventually decided to put Dad in a memory care facility where he had people there who theoretically were trained and were there 24 hours a day. And they were in 8-hour shifts, not 24-hour shifts like my mom, because she was just worn out. And my dad was in his early 90s, and my mom was 90 as well. So, she was just getting hammered. Now, in the case of my mom now, I do take care of her for part of the time. We do have a companion that comes in, but I take care of her on certain days all day. And but she's ambulatory, and she has mental capacity. She's very sharp. Even though she's 100 years old, she's amazing.
Wow.
And so she gets around, she visits, she goes and socializes. And
I love that.
Yeah, I'm really blessed.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a little different than someone who is not capable of doing those things. And my mom has to have a walker, but
which is fine. Fine.
She gets on that walker and she moves out.
Yes.
I have trouble keeping up with her.
Our focus is dementia. My focus is dementia, Alzheimer's and dementia.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
so we train our caregiver on that.
That's my book. I wrote my book because I ran into so many people who had parents who had dementia, mm-hmm. and they would get so angry with them, and they'd say, "Oh, man, my mom was pulling my chain today." And I'd say, "Well, what do you mean?" She kept saying, "You were a blonde when you were a kid and this, that, and the other." I've never been a blonde. And I would say, "Well, who cares? What difference does it make?" And if you're not living in their reality, then you're not living in a reality, because their reality is the only one around when you're with them. And so I was very frustrated by some of that. I'd say, that's the disease. Your mom's not trying to pull your chain. She has a disease. And I didn't plan to write the book. I just ended up writing it. Mm-hmm. And it was mainly because of people not understanding. And also because of the stages that happen. I include a lot of that in the book so that people are not shocked by the fact that my dad, who was well educated, he was an engineer, he was a brilliant musician, and toward the end he didn't know what a knife and a fork and a spoon were. Mm-hmm. And as sad as that is, and it is tragically sad when it's someone you love, the point is that you have to help them through that in some form or fashion, and that's where he lives. So you just have to be aware and not abuse him about it or anything.
Yeah.
Help him.
I'm sorry. What did you learn as you were birthing all the book?
That's a good word for it. I wrote a book 100 years ago too. Birthing is a great word for that.
What did you learn?
Well, I kind of learned what I had learned. Mm-hmm. In other words, an example is, my dad, when he was at home with my mom, and he would say, "Isn't it about dinner time? Honey, what's for dinner?" And my mom would say, "Spaghetti." And my dad would say, "Spaghetti," as if it was
never heard it before.
And it was gold.
Yeah.
And I thought, we lose touch with what we consider to be simple things. Mm-hmm. You go around the world and see how many people get spaghetti, or other things that we have here in this country, as for instance, and they may not have that, but we have it. That's just a staple, and you go, oh yeah, spaghetti. Okay, mm-hmm. Fine. But Dad would go, he'd just be so amazed and ready to go. Yeah. I learned that when he was, are you familiar with sundowning? I'm sure you are.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
There are, to kind of explain, to someone who may be listening, sundowning is when a person with dementia will, a lot of times they revert to something that happened earlier in life, and they have a need to get somewhere or find someone or do something.
Mm.
So in my dad's case, he had to get to the place where they were doing the thing.
Yes.
And I said, well, what thing are they doing? Well, they're doing the thing. Who's doing it, Dad? Well, the guys, they're doing it.
And where's my keys? I got to
that's
drive
right.
to that place to go to that thing.
That's right.
Yes.
And so, what I would find is that we would go round and round in this circular conversation for 2 or 3 hours. And, I would want to take a gun and shoot both of us, just to get out of the misery. And I finally found a way, an understanding that my job was not to solve the problem of the guys doing the thing down at the place. My job was to give him comfort. And so what I started doing, I would go through one iteration of it. And then the second time it would come about, which was, 2 minutes later, I'd say, hey, Dad, do you trust me? And he'd look at me and he'd go, well, of course I trust you, son. So, well, why don't you let me take care of this for you? I can take care of it. And he'd say, you would do that? I'd say, yep. He'd go, well, okay. And I'd leave. I'd go back in my room for 5 minutes. I'd come back out. My dad was fine. What I learned was that I really had to listen to him. It was so specific, and pick up on a word to utilize in my part of the conversation. And I thought, am I doing that with my clients? Am I listening to them well enough? When I ask a guy to give me $250,000, am I really listening to what he's telling me? Or am I just going on my path and thinking, well, he's just making up an excuse or something of that nature? And it really caused me to refocus in my work and start really being in the moment with that person.
Yep. So, that we call in our world redirecting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Listening to him. And then while he's in his head, it's all fire, and kind of redirect him and bring him back into the present moment. Awesome.
And a lot of these things sound simple.
Mm-hmm.
But with my dad, for instance, going to the place where the guys were doing the thing, this was almost a matter of life and death.
Mm-hmm.
He would feel like he had failed, that he was a failure. And I mean, it was so traumatic for him that the intensity of it draws you in, and it's amazing. You'd be worn out.
Yeah.
And
it's the same story for a lot of people with dementia. They go through that sundown effect,
Yep.
and it's every evening.
yes,
And
it is.
it's from between 4 and 6 o'clock. It's every day. So it's different story, but it's the same thing.
Same thing.
So it's all about redirecting them,
Yep.
and kind of, and a lot of time we use music to help them kind of bring it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then so we can kind of, put them back into the present moment.
Yeah, it is an amazing thing. And I used music with my dad a lot because he and I grew up playing music with my dad. That's how I got to know him. I'm a musician. I studied it in college. I taught it. I still songwrite and compose every now and then. And, if I played something that he and I had played together 40 years ago or whenever, he could, he would stop pretty much everything and focus on that. But in the midst of what we were doing, I couldn't just get up and go play the piano. So I would try and find other ways to get him just to refocus, or not only refocus, which is what he would be doing, of course, but so he would relax and not worry about the problem that he had built into this incredible mountain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the
Thank you for that.
Didn't mean to get off on that.
No,
But
thank you for that.
I love what you were saying, and I would hire you guys in a heartbeat.
Well, thank you.
So did the book come together easy, or was it hard to get what was going on in your head committed to paper? What was the process of writing a book like?
That's a good question. It came together fairly easily, but over a period of years. Because I didn't start out to write a book. I just started writing, and it became somewhat cathartic and therapeutic. And so I thought, well, what about this? Well, I'll write about that, and I'd write about that. It's a series of essays. So they're not necessarily connected. They're not necessarily in order. And it came over a period of years. So I actually have a disclaimer at the beginning of the book saying, I don't know what's going to happen in the future by the time I finish this book, but I'm not changing I'm not following the chronology. I'm following what happened, and you can, take it from there. But, and I also make another disclaimer, which is this is not a scientific or medical book. I do have some studies that are quoted in there, but it is more the soft skills of dealing with, how dementia happens. There are a lot of people who can tell you that better than I. What the issue is in the brain. There are people who are disagreeing with some of it at this point. That's up to them. I don't care. I just know that my dad was having a problem, and I needed to solve these problems. And in the course of that, he taught me. And so, it became something that was, meaningful for my life, and that I try and think about and continue to invest in those gifts.
Well, what a gift for so many of us to have access to the book. I'm looking forward to reading it, but I was intrigued and inspired by the idea that it was also a gift to yourself. It even, you found parallels to your work life, lessons that you drew from really diving into this.
Well, and it's where I felt a lot of people that I knew who had parents with dementia particularly were missing the boat. They weren't drawing from it. It would just upset them, and it would either upset them because it would anger them, or it would be so sad that they would be upset. And I understand that. I miss my dad tremendously. We were very close, but at the same time, he would have wanted me to learn and to, be able to feasibly help others in the course of that. So why not give him that legacy? And I will say that I gave a speech, a couple months after my dad died, and it was a speech on teamwork, that I have, and it's called Everything I Learned About Teamwork I Learned in Prison. And,
nice title.
Yeah. Well, it makes
for
people
another
curious.
podcast, I think.
Yeah, I think
What's
so.
that?
Yeah. Obviously, we're having
Prison
you back
story.
as well.
I'd be happy to come back. So anyway, I was giving that, and toward the end of it, it's about my dad. And I was giving this to a bunch of medical professionals, and, I started talking about my dad, and I started crying, and I got almost hysterically crying and couldn't stop. And I was still trying to finish this speech, and I thought, well, okay, this is not going to work out well. And I finally finished it and moved on. But I'll never forget that, because it just crept up on me suddenly that, and part of what I was telling them was about some of the gifts that my dad had imparted. And the next thing I knew, I was a mess. So, I don't think I'll do that again. Not the imparted part, but the crying part.
But it's okay. It's okay to cry.
It is okay to cry,
okay.
but you don't want that to dominate your speech.
Well, at the time, you may have needed to do that.
Well, apparently my body felt that way.
Yes.
My brain was going, "What are you doing, fool?" So.
All right. Where can we get our hands on this book, and where can people connect with you on your work? I
will tell you that the book is available on Amazon.com. Gifts from My Father by Dan Adkins, Adkins. And And it's available in an ebook as well that you can download, as well as the paperback. And I am available my email is dan@strategistics or strategistics.com. And I will spell that because it is strategy, strategy.stix.com. And, you can go to strategistics.com, and that's my website as well.
Fantastic. Dan, I am so glad that you joined us this morning,
I
man.
so appreciate your allowing me, and with such a good crew here as well. I'm just so happy to meet you all.
Same
and
here.
a pleasure to listen to you.
Let's clap for Dan.
Clap for Dan. Hey, all right.
Thank you much.
Well, on that note, until next time, this is Stone Payton for our guest today and everyone here at the Business RadioX family saying we'll see you again on Cherokee Business Radio.